Hello, and welcome for being here today. I'm using a different camera. Hopefully I'll remember to look at it. One of the things that I wanted to tell you right at the beginning is you always have permission to call me out. So if you hear me making ableist statements, if you read our newsletter and see me writing ableist sentences, please call me out. I think, like a lot of us, we've grown up and kind of conditioned, and we have ableist thoughts and statements that we've used a lot. And I am evolving on my advocacy journey. And so I would appreciate if you call me out when you hear me say something that you don't think is appropriate. So let us know if you're here. Say hi in the comments so I can welcome you. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you 4 different things that I used to say as an advocate, and now I'm evolving to saying something different. So let's look at our first one. I used to always tell parents, ask for a copy of the draft IEP. Make sure you get it 3 to 5 days ahead of time, because you want to be able to read that draft, digest it, so you can really participate in a meaningful way in the meeting. So if this sounds like something that you've heard before, let me know in the comments. Have you ever heard the advice, ask for the draft IEP ahead of time? Let me know. Because now what I've learned is to suggest to parents to give your input before the draft IEP is even written. Yes, Kim. Kim says she's heard that advice, and you might have heard that from me, Kim, right? So now what we're looking at is not only how you can give your traditional vision statement or parent input or parent concern, but you, as an equal member of the team, you can also submit your input around your child's goals that you think that he or she needs for this next year. You have input around accommodations that you know work or don't work. You have input about how much service time and where the services should be. All parts of the IEP are open for your input. So that's what I would like to see more parents doing, is blocking out time before that draft is even written. And of course, it takes some pre-planning, right? So you're going to have to mark on your calendar and probably start thinking about your input a couple months before your IEP meeting. So it does take additional time, but I think it really turns out to be worthwhile, because more of your voice will be in that draft. Now, that's not to say everything you submit ahead of time, they're going to copy and paste it, but that's what I would suggest you ask for, because we don't want the staff summarizing your parent input. And so what we would do is have different sections of the IEP. You put your information, your input there, and then say, please, if the rest of, the IEP team agrees with this, let's go ahead and put this into the draft IEP. And then we're not always reacting to somebody sending us a draft IEP, which, can be tweaked, of course, but a lot of times the draft is pretty much what you'll see as the final IEP. So instead of reacting, let's be proactive and give your input ahead of time. You know, another thing that I used to say was, we are more alike than different. Anybody else hear this? And it used to be a campaign, I don't know if it still is, with a lot of the Down syndrome organizations. I remember when Dylan was younger, and city buses in Colorado Springs would have, you know, these side banners on the bus that would say, we're more alike than different, and it would be a gigantic photo of somebody with Down syndrome. And so that made sense to me. And that's something that I hung on for years and years, where, you know, we would be in IEP meetings for Dylan, or I would be in IEP meetings for other students as an advocate. And we would talk about, you know, look at all the ways that this child is alike, and really emphasize that, the similarities, and not talk enough about some of the differences and how they are actually very important to celebrate. So I used to say we're more alike than different, and now I'm looking at how can we instill disability pride within our children. How do we feel that disability pride as parents for our children? Because we know, right, that we're going to be modeling that. So give me some reactions in the comments. Have you heard before we're more alike than different? Is that something that resonated with you? Because I really hope that we can start looking at disability as a difference, and that difference is okay. Also, that difference is something that we want to celebrate, because that is part of who our child is. Yes, 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 Abby says. Hey, Abby. Yeah, so lots of people have heard that. And what I'm trying to suggest is, at least for myself, I'm trying not to talk about how people are more alike than different. And Abby says, I also like celebrating who our kids are. Yes, 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 yes. And I don't know how to say your name. If you could give me the phonetic spelling, I don't want to mispronounce your name. But yes, he's saying that his son is different, and different can be beautiful. So that's kind of the new message that we need to keep sharing with others, because not everyone probably in our families would see, how would you be, you know, proud of a disability. And so that's what we need to be modeling now. Hey, Angela. Angela says we are alike in that we all have to have true friendships and feel a sense of belonging. Yes, yes. And that kind of goes with that, you know, we don't have special needs, because we all have that need of wanting to belong, wanting to have true friendships. So that's another reason why, you know, at least I don't use the term special needs, because our kids have similar needs like everybody else. And Angela says, yes. So another thing that I used to say was to use your child's strengths to prove that they are worthy of being included. And so we have heard a lot about strength-based IEPs. I talk about strength-based IEPs. I still think those are important. The mistake that I believe that I made was that I tried to help parents make their case that their children could be included. And so, you know, I would work with the parents before the IEP meeting. What are some of your child's strengths? You know, we would look at, what progress have they made? What skills are they working on? How can we bring all of this in and kind of prove to the school members of the IEP team that indeed our child was worthy of being included? Now, that's what I used to say. And now I say there are no prerequisites to being included. And so as an advocate, I tell myself I need to stop trying to make a case. Oh, this child, they're so close to grade level, it will be easy. They have no behavior problems. They're really good with their communication device. It's like, no, because what I'm inadvertently saying is, oh, if the kids are close to grade level, we can include them. Oh, if the children don't have any behavior problems, we can include them. No, we can include every student based on the fact that they're a student in that building. And it doesn't matter how close they are to grade level standards. It doesn't matter what method they use for communication. There are no prerequisites to being included. So if you hear in an IEP meeting when staff is saying, well, let's have them, be served in the special ed room for at least this next year, and let's see how their skills develop, and then we'll revisit how much time they can be in general ed. No, when we agree to statements like that, we're agreeing to there's a gatekeeper and you can only rise to the occasion of being included if your skills, if your communication, if your behavior, if all of those things are more normal, we'll let you be included. Yes, and Abby says, hi, I know my child is different and she has something to offer, and I want her to be proud of who she is. Yes, exactly. And Karen's here. Hey, Karen. And I was thinking, Karen, next year, you'll be doing something else at this time. So we'll have to figure that out, how you'll be able to be on our live shows. All right, let's move on to another thing that I used to say. I used to say, advocate like your child's education, it should be depends on it, not spends on it. Advocate like your child's education depends on it. That's what I used to say. And now I say, advocate like every child's education depends on it. So yes, our individual advocacy is really important for our own children. And as an advocate, I encourage parents to continue to speak up, speak out for their own child. What I'm also realizing, I think I realized this a long time ago and didn't accept it maybe, is that when we only advocate for our child, when we advocate for one child at a time, it does not lead to systemic change. And we know our public schools need systemic change. So yes, I will continue to work with families one-on-one and help them with their advocacy efforts. Yes, in our Trailblazer membership group, I will still help our parents advocate for their individual child. And I'm looking at ways that we can have more collaborative advocacy going on. And that means we're working with a group of people, not just ourselves, and that we are looking at all students, not just students with disabilities. because the change that we want to make for our public schools is going to help every student that comes through that door. And so when I look at collaborative advocacy, you might have heard me talk about going to school board meetings. We had a show a few weeks ago on that. And I've been keeping you up to date on what's happening in Billings, Montana, when an individual family was fighting for their daughter to be able to attend school next year when she's 19, and how the community rallied behind them. And it became an issue not only for students with disabilities to be able to return to school for like their senior year when they're 19, but now the school board policy changed. And so it affects all students. Any student that is 19 years old can return for their senior year. So that's an example of what parents can do when they rally others and when the community gets behind your change efforts. And so, when I moved to Idaho and changed the business name from Visions and Voices Together to Collaborative Special Education Advocacy, I was thinking in my mind the collaboration between parents and educators, when they're either at the IEP table or, working in a cooperative way. And now it's like, yes, that collaboration between parents and staff is really important. But again, my vision for that has grown, and we need to have more collective or collaborative advocacy. So we're making change on a bigger level. And sometimes we look at that and it's like, Charmaine, I have enough to do. I don't need to pick up another project. And I totally get it because I feel the same way, right? We all have enough to do already. However, when you get just a few friends, and when you start doing things like going to school board meetings, building relationships with the superintendent, that is going to make a huge difference for what you're going to be trying later. So at the beginning stages of your collaborative advocacy, a lot of it's just getting to know the people and networking with them. But I also had an example that I wanted to share with you that came up the other day. I was talking to a mom, and she was saying how the lunchroom is just like so noisy and distracting. And it's like really hard for her daughter to be able to go in there and eat lunch with all of that noise. And so I said, so, what does she do? Does she wear, noise canceling headphones? And it was like, no, she eats her lunch in the special ed room. And I have visions of when I student taught back in the 1970s, and the students that were in my class where I was a student teacher, the classroom teacher had all of the kids eat in the special ed room. And it was like, where is there any time to socialize with other kids? And so I think sometimes when we think of things like noisy lunchrooms, we come up with supposedly some solutions. So see if this sounds familiar. And if you have a child that has a hard time with noisy lunchrooms, let us know about that. So a lot of times noise canceling headphones are an accommodation that will be suggested. Or for some kids, they prefer the actual earplugs, that you can insert. Sometimes the accommodation is they eat elsewhere. And sometimes there's no accommodation and the staff just says, you'll have to tough it out. I mean, that's life. The lunchroom is noisy. So I just, when I hear that students are being excluded from eating lunch because it's too noisy, to me, it's like, yeah, but what else did we look at for a solution? So let me see here. I'm not sure if I came across this on Facebook, but it's you can go to their website. It's called greatervoice.com, and their mission is to work with families that have deaf and hard of hearing children, and especially in communities where what they call low resources or limited resources are available. So the Greater Voice works with families in the United States and also in other countries. So you might want to check out their website. But what I noticed is they had this resource about how to make the general ed classroom quieter, so deaf and hard of hearing children had an easier time of, picking up some of the language that people were saying versus all the background noise. Hey, Anne, glad you're here. So what I thought is, some of these ideas that they're giving for how we can make classrooms less noisy, we could apply those to the lunchroom. So let's look at some of the ideas they suggested. One was to hang anything soft on the walls. So, some schools have like cloth banners, and they might have those, in the hallway by the front office. Well, maybe putting the banners down in the lunchroom would help with that noise reduction. Or they could have new banners. You can use, like rugs, and you can hang those up on the walls that are decorative. So the idea is, how can we change and not just accept that the lunchroom is always going to be this noisy? What can we do so kids can be there and not be, stressed out by the noise? So another suggestion that the Greater Voice had was use bulletin boards with either the felt or cork background, and that will absorb noise. That would be an easy thing that schools could do in lunchrooms. It could be bulletin boards with, like upcoming events, or bulletin boards that, I don't know, showcase different success that classes have had. But yeah, bulletin boards don't have to just be in classrooms. They could be in the cafeteria. And Karen says, yes, and they make foam specifically for this too. So yeah, I mean, there are so many things that are available now. I know another thing, and this kind of goes along with Karen's suggestion, is there's actual acoustic panels too that you can use. And, those would probably be a little more costly than bulletin boards or, wall hangings. And this could be a good project maybe for the PTA in your school. It's like, could we buy some of these, either the foam or the acoustic panels, and could those be put in the lunchroom? So I want us to look at what are some maybe just small projects that we start with, and use that as a foundation for our collaborative advocacy. Because I would see that lots of parents would probably be on board for reducing the noise in the school cafeteria. So again, we want to reach out. We don't want to just talk to parents of disabled children, but we want to talk to other parents too. I'm sure even the lunchroom staff, right? They would probably like it to be less noisy. So a school-wide project like that is something that you and a few parents could present to your PTA, present to your principal, have the lunchroom staff weigh in, do a survey in the school, and see what ideas kids have, because you'll be amazed when we ask kids for ideas, the good ideas that they'll come up. Hey, Kim. Kim says the theme I'm getting from this whole live episode, when you know better, you do better. And I love it. Yeah. And I am 69 years old. I say that quietly. And I'm still learning. So, you can teach an old advocate new tricks. And Kristen says, hey, Kristen from Ohio, she said, and if your child doesn't need this, or my child, let's advocate for each other's children together. Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. That's a very important point, Kristen. And I look at that sometimes, like I remember when I was back in a Partners in Leadership program in Colorado when Dylan was real little. And we worked on other cases, not like our child, for different, examples. And I thought, why would I want to, this sounds horrible. Why would I want to put all this effort into someone else's case when I really can be strategizing for my own child? And that was a big lesson that I learned then, and I need reminding, is that, if we expect others to help support us and support our children, we need to be there for other families. And when we're looking at collaborative advocacy, it's about the greater good, right? And that's the kind of thinking that I'm encouraging you to do. And so here are some other ideas of collaborative advocacy. And I also wanted to say that periodically I'm going to be putting this graphic up on my Visions and Voices Together Facebook page, where you're watching this video now. And I'm going to periodically give suggestions for, this is something you could take up in your school or in your district. So let's look at some other ideas here. Look at how accessible the events are in your building. Like I know at our grandkids' school, beginning in May, they have a book fair coming up. How accessible is the book fair for each and every student in your building? Are the shelves, are a lot of the books on shelves that if somebody is using a wheelchair, they wouldn't be able to take that, book off the shelf to be able to see if they wanted to buy it? What reading levels of books? And usually, like scholastic book fairs, you get a good assortment. But the other thing that you might want to check is, what are some of the messages in the books that are going to be for sale at the book fair? And I don't want to get into banning books, but I do want to get into the ableist messages that can be in some books. And we need to be, if our child is reading that, we need to be able to explain some of those ableist statements. The other thing is other events like carnivals. A lot of times schools will have end of the year or a Halloween, a fall carnival. Look at the games, look at the activities. How accessible are they? So you, as a collaborative advocacy idea, you could volunteer. Don't you love it? You could volunteer to be on the book fair committee, on the carnival committee. And one of the things that you could be specifically looking for is issues around accessibility. And that would be a collaborative effort. And think of the benefits that would give all the kids and parents and grandparents that are coming to these events. So look at typical events and what you could do. And Tamara, hey Tamara, she said, my son's high school cafeteria is not as loud as at the elementary school because everyone is on their phones. So sad. Yeah, that is interesting. So thanks for bringing that up, because I didn't even think about that. So maybe noisy cafeterias are more of an elementary issue I wonder, do you have kids? Anybody on this live or watching the replay? Do you have children in middle school? And is their lunchroom noisy? I know. So Anne says, yes, that's the benefit of local Down syndrome groups also. Yeah, that collaboration can happen, right? And then we want to move beyond just people, parents that have kids with Down syndrome, because usually what we're advocating for our children is going to benefit a lot of marginalized students in our schools. I know Karen has been on her school's book fair, and she said our book fair is pretty inclusive. There's more representation than there has been historically. Most adults really love the ableist message in some of the books, though. Yeah, so I'm not saying we have to ban those books, but what I'm saying is if our kids buy books that have those ableist messages, that's a book that we want to read together and talk about, because we can learn from that. I just don't want people reading the ableist messages and believing that that's true, right? So Abby says our middle school phones are not allowed to be used during school hours. It's a very strict policy. Yeah. So Abby, do you know if the lunchrooms are noisy in your middle school? The other thing is, if you guys have heard of anybody solving the noisy lunchroom problem, give us those ideas too, because all of these things are good for us to share with each other. And another idea is to start attending school board meetings. And like I said a few weeks ago, we did a whole show about this. And the show notes for tomorrow, I will give the link for that. And speaking of show notes, if you're not receiving my weekly newsletters, I encourage you to sign up. It's real easy. Just go to iep.today/weekly adv tips. And tomorrow I'll be doing a summary of the points that we made today in our live, and I'll also be giving you some additional resources. So start attending school board meetings, get a group of friends together, and one person goes, or two, probably it's best to at least have two people go to the May school board meeting. You have two other friends that sign up to go to the June school board meeting. So it's not such a, kind of a hassle, a problem for you. Like, I'm going to go to all the school board meetings for the next 9 months. But to share that. And then also what you do is get people together that went to the school board meeting, get parents together that are interested, and so you can have a way to share. This is what they said at the May board meeting. This is going to be on the agenda for the June board meeting. And just starting to get a feel for, one, how school board meetings operate in your school district. Look around, see who's attending, have some time, go a little bit early before the meeting starts, introduce yourself to the school board members. And this is kind of the foundation of later when you have a bigger group of community members and parents that are working together on a certain issue or concern, that you can go to the school board meeting, speak in the public comment time, and talk about that issue or concern. You will be much more effective if you start going to school board meetings just as an observer and listener before something major comes up. So I encourage people, and a lot of times the school board meetings are also virtual. Virtual is nice because you don't have to leave your house, but it really makes a difference if you can be there in person. That's how you're going to be able to make some more connections. And so here's another idea for collaborative advocacy. This is something that right now we have a group of 3 of us that are working on seeing if we can get support from other organizations in the state of Idaho to pass some legislation next session, so it'd be next year, to have a state law about restraint and seclusion. Idaho is one of the few states that doesn't have any law. Some districts have school board policies. So this is a collaborative advocacy effort that's going to take more time, more effort. We're going to have to get a lot of buy-in and support in order to even find a sponsor of a bill like this in Idaho. But I thought every once in a while I'll kind of keep you up to date on what we've done so far. So the first thing I did is I emailed a mom that I've worked with. Her children have been secluded and restrained and caused amazing amounts of trauma. And I said, let's work on this. Let's do this. And she emailed another mom that has had her children experience seclusion and restraint. And so the 3 of us said, okay, so what are some other organizations in the state of Idaho that might be interested in helping us get a state law passed? And so that was our next step, was to brainstorm people that we knew at a variety of agencies like Disability Rights Idaho, the Developmental Disability Council of Idaho, our Parent Training and Information Center. We have federations for families dealing with mental health issues. So we made a list of people in those organizations. I set up a doodle poll of when we can come together and meet as a group. And that's all we've done so far. But those are those beginning little steps of getting organized. Oh, and the other thing is we contacted Guy Stevens from the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint. And guess what? An education reporter from one of the biggest newspapers in Idaho, an education reporter had recently talked to Guy because he has a pulse nationally on how things are going with restraint and seclusion. So Guy gave us the introduction to this education reporter who I didn't know. And tomorrow morning, we have a Zoom meeting, the 3 moms. We have a Zoom meeting with the education reporter, and we're going to talk about what our goal is and how we're trying to, at this stage, just gain some agreement from other people and other groups that they would be helping us. So that's pretty good. Tamara says, that's awesome. I will cheer for you. Yes. And Michelle says, Michelle is a trailblazer from Colorado. She says, definitely need to start going to the meetings and find a like-minded friend to go with me. That's the hard part. Yeah. And, and that's where, we want to look outside of our kind of our realm of, parents of kids with disabilities. A lot of times that's kind of who we hang out with. But when you're looking at some issues like, how do we make sure our general ed classrooms use the principles of universal design for learning? I mean, that's a topic that lots of people can get on board with. And so, think of things that don't necessarily have to do just with disabilities, like the noise in the lunchroom. That can help lots of people, kids and adults, right? So for school board meetings, Michelle, maybe look at what would be, some improvements, some changes that you would like to see at the district level. And are they of interest to other people? And you can even look at like your neighbor coming with you. So yeah, kind of scope out your list of people you are connected with and see. I mean, if you have a PTA, PTO at your school, that might be an activity for your PTA to do, is to assign different people, and you could be one of those and see if you can't find a partner to go with you. So that would be excellent. So collaborative advocacy, we can do this alongside our individual advocacy for our children. One of the biggest things that we need to do is to widen our circle of allies, to look for other parents, to look for students. I mean, having students go to school board meetings to listen and later to do some speaking, that would be excellent. Community people, you know, your business leaders in the community, they have, you know, they are interested in having a good school system, right? So the graduates coming out of there can, you know, be employable, right? And I was just thinking of another group as far as community people. You know, there's other like community organizations like Kiwanis, you know, like service-based. I bet there's some people in there that would get interested in school issues. Oh, the other one I was thinking of was real estate agents. I mean, real estate agents really depend on saying our school district is blah, blah, you know, and touting the positives of the school districts. So you might find some real estate agents that you know that would be interested in working with some school issues. So let us know any other comments you have. The other thing is, I've mentioned a few times, we have several of our parent advocate trailblazers watching live with us today. And if you are interested in not only getting support and help for advocating for your child, and you are interested in what kind of collaborative advocacy could I get involved in, I encourage you to either, you know, write in the comments, send me a message. And if you would like to know more about our trailblazers, because when I look at, you know, recommending that we widen our circle of allies, then to me it was like, well, we need to widen our circle of trailblazers in our monthly membership group, because that's where a lot of action is going to come from. And we have parents from around the country. So it's exciting because we see these little pockets of change, but we need more parents from, you know, the same school district. We need more parents from the same state. So we can start supporting each other and helping each other brainstorm, how are we going to make more systemic change happen in our school district? How are we going to make systemic change happen in our state? So I encourage you to let me know if you're interested in becoming a trailblazer. We would love to have you. And just to summarize, our 4 advocacy tips that we want to be using these days is 1, give your input before the draft IEP is even written. 2, look at how you're modeling disability pride and realizing that disabilities are a natural part of the human condition. Make sure we understand and make sure the staff understands that there are no prerequisites for a child to be included. And advocate like every child's education depends on it. Because guess what? It does. It's not just your child that matters, but it's every child in our school. So those are my 4 tips for the day. Let us know. We still have some time for additional comments. Monica's here from New Jersey. Great tips. Karen is endorsing our Trailblazer group. And Anne says, was that a parent-formed or a state program? So I'm not sure which example you're talking about, Anne. So can you put a little bit more in there? Hey, Renee. Renee is an advocate in the Chicago area. How are you? And let's see. Abby says, thanks, Charmaine. Yes, totally agree. And so maybe, okay. So here I should go back to, I think this was Tamara's first comment. Excuse me. She said in our town, the CPAC parents meet in person once a month to share the good, the bad, and the ugly at school. Yeah. And those special ed advisory committees can be a force that can help create change. And, you know, what I would encourage, if you have a local special ed advisory committee or advisory group, is to say, can we expand our goal and our mission? And so it's not just to give advice or input to the school district about special ed issues, but how can we look at creating systemic change that will help all students? And so, yeah, that's what I would encourage. And I think, Anne-Marie, you were saying, was that a parent-formed or a state program? In IDEA, it mandates that states have a state-level parent advisory group, special ed advisory group. Some states will require each district to also have a parent group like that. Not every state does, so it depends. But at a minimum, your state has a state-level group. So that could be another collective advocacy idea for you, is to, to see if they have openings on the state-level committee and submit your application for it. There's other boards like, your Parent Training and Information Center in each state has a board. A lot of times they're looking for additional parents. The only thing is, all of those are pretty much founded on working with people with disabilities. So I would encourage you to look and expand that. So look at district committees, like if your district has an accountability committee, because they deal with a lot of other issues, not, just one specific issue. Usually districts have curriculum level committees, and the committee is looking at new reading curriculum or a new math curriculum. Get involved there. I mean, you just never know from the networking and the connections that you're going to make with other school people. So that can be really helpful. Tamara says, Anne-Marie, it's an outside of the CPAC meetings, which the special ed director joins every time. Okay. And she gave the link for the one in Massachusetts. So yeah, you can see, and I don't know the name of the one for South Carolina, but if you go to the South Carolina, special ed, department, and you will most likely find a link for your state level, advocacy or advisory committee. And Anne says, is the national restraint movement going to be separate from state legislation? Well, for a number of years, I don't know how many, I don't know, decades, we have been trying to get a state law passed not a state law, but a national law passed around restraint and seclusion, and we haven't been successful. It's kind of sad, but so in the meantime, a lot of states are looking at their own law around restraint and seclusion, especially in schools. So like Maryland just passed one. I know Nebraska has been trying to work on one. Colorado recently rewrote, updated their state law. So the other thing that I would suggest that you can do is, if your state Department of Ed has like a monthly newsletter that comes out and talks about what's happening in your state around education, sign up for those newsletters. You will be amazed at the little nuggets of information that you find in those. A lot of times the special ed department at your state level will have some kind of a newsletter that goes out to directors and teachers, but parents can also sign up for those newsletters. So all of those little tidbits will help you, like I said, network with other people, find out what other, districts in your state are working on, and it can be really, really helpful. Yeah, so Anne-Marie said that her statement was about Tamara's, and Tamara said, yes, the parent training and information centers can be really helpful. So I would love to have this conversation continue. So when you see the collaborative advocacy posts on my Visions and Voices Together page, make comments. Have you, has some group in your district worked on a similar issue? What ideas did they come up with? I'm really becoming more of a student of system change. And especially in our Trailblazer group, I'm going to be giving more trainings. And like some are going to be really specific, like these are emails. This is a template for an email that you can send out to organizations. This is a checklist that you do when you're thinking of having community meetings. So I want to be able to give our Trailblazers some real specific things and not just like change theory. So if you're interested in specific ideas and specific things that you can take back to your district, let me know in the comments. And we are at almost the top of the hour, so let me know if you have any other comments or questions. Next Thursday, we have a guest on our show, Carol Quirk, who is the CEO of Maryland's Coalition for Inclusive Education, is going to be our guest, and she's going to be talking about system change. So there's a little bit of a thread going through here, right? And she's going to be sharing what what the Maryland Coalition for Inclusive Education does as far as helping school districts make systemic change, how they select districts to be like pilots in their program. What Carol has like really looked at the science of implementation and how you implement change. And so she's going to be sharing about that. And I'm going to be learning from Carol, and I hope that you'll be with us next week so you can also be learning on how some groups are helping districts around the country to make change. So it is exciting. There are lots of good things happening. Tamara says, thank you so much, Charmaine. Very informative as always. Well, thanks for being here. And Tamara is one of our Trailblazers from Massachusetts. So Tamara, we got to find other friends in Massachusetts to join our Trailblazer group, because we got our marching orders. We're gonna still make change for our individual kids. I'm still going to be there as an advocate for families, working with them one-on-one. And I'm also going to be planting those seeds that we need to step up our game and really work on advocacy efforts that are going to create that sustainable, systematic change in our public schools. So I am Charmaine Thaner. I love being with you here every Thursday, so I hope that we will see you next Thursday at noon Mountain Time. And in between then, keep the comments and questions coming. I'll be sending out some show notes tomorrow with some more resources, so look in your email box for that. And on that note, Anne says, thank you so much. And it's my pleasure. So see you all next week. And if you're a trailblazer, we do our after the show at 1:15. So trailblazers, return. We'll be back here.